Hi, I'm Nirka, and I'm inspired to be with you. Thank you for joining me today. Our time together is about you elevating your communication skills so that you speak with greater purpose, poise, precision, and power than ever before. This is about communication mastery and how you can change your life with the power of the language you use. And the reason why I'm inspired to give you this teaching is because I know it will improve every area of your life. You'll come to know that your communication shapes your reality, that language brings the formless into form, that words matter because they materialize as matter, and that you create as you speak. How well you communicate with others and also, and most importantly, with yourself determines the quality of your life. See, your ability to ground ideas, to consciously create your vision, to materialize results is directly proportionate to your ability to effectively communicate. In other words, your success in your business ventures and your relationships and every area of your life equals your communication. Your communication determines the quality of your relationships. How you communicate with yourself determines your health and your vitality, your level of physical fitness and your well-being. Your communication determines the size of your bank account, state of your finances, your own thoughts and vibrations around money and how it works and how much you believe you're able to create and by when, how much you feel you're worth. See, this inner communication that you have influences how you show up in the world, how you communicate your gifts and the value that you bring in a way that inspires action and produces tangible, measurable results, or not. Even the quality of your mental and emotional state reflects your communication. I mean, just pause for a moment and think about the last week of your life. Were you experiencing disempowering states? You're experiencing states like stress or frustration or overwhelm or perhaps fear or doubt? Or were you experiencing empowering states like enthusiasm, inspiration, gratitude, centeredness, love? Or was the pendulum swinging? See, your mental and emotional state is a direct reflection of the conversations that you've been having with yourself. So our time together is about using language to activate brilliance. It's about living at your highest level of excellence and communicating from this space. And I call this living in your supreme influence. And this is the title of my new book, Supreme Influence, Change Your Life with the Power of the Language You Use. And I'll give you insights on what that actually means. The word supreme refers to the authentic you. And influence, as I define it, is in-word fluency. This is when your thoughts, your words, your beliefs, your body language, your values, your goals, your vision, your sense of self are all on the same page. And when you are living a life that's congruent in that fashion, you have power. And I don't mean power over any person or thing. I mean the real kind of power, the one that comes from within. And it's the kind of power that knows that you don't need anything because who you are is whole and complete. And when you communicate from that place, miracles happen. So today, I'm going to give you some insights on how to masterfully communicate from this empowered place. And before I do, to maximize our time, wherever you are right now, whether you're driving and, listening to me in your car, or perhaps you're listening to me at the beginning of your day, or maybe at the end of your day, wherever you are right now, I'd like to invite you to just pause for a moment and join me in aligning our intention and our attention by inhaling one conscious deep breath in together. And as you do, just bring all of your presence into this moment. Ready? So let's just sit up in our chair and be aware of our body, be aware of your breath, wherever you are, and just pause for a moment right now and inhale a deep breath in. And as you do, just fill your lungs with your life force energy, extend your abdomen so you get a full inhalation and just hold it for a moment. You can honor that space between the breaths. It's just like with music. It's the space between the notes that makes the music. And then as you exhale, just release all the cares of the day and all the cares of the world. Bringing all of your awareness to this moment, feeling refreshed and ready to integrate new insights. So I will begin by sharing with you a little bit about me and what's brought me to this session. See, I embarked on my quest early on, my quest for freedom, for truth, and for enlightenment when I was 15 years old. Except back then I called it running away from home. So a little background on me. My parents immigrated to the United States from Cuba. I was born in Miami, Florida, and I remember my early years being so frustrated at my circumstances, feeling stuck and knowing inside that I was destined for more than what was showing up in my life. It's like, have you been there where you're looking around at your circumstances and you know that who you are is destined to accomplish great things? So at an early age, I started searching. I started reading, I started looking, and I made a decision early on that transformed my life. I decided to put myself in environments that demanded more from me than I ever believed I had. And by the time I was 19, I was traveling the country as a top corporate trainer for Anthony Robbins, living in 16 different cities during an almost 5-year period. And I remember I would sit in the audience in those seminars back then and watch my then boss, Tony Robbins, miraculously transform people's lives. I saw couples that were on the verge of divorce or separation instantly let go of grievances and connect in a new way, authentically. I saw and witnessed people that had lost their businesses and their life savings and even lost their hope. I saw them reconnect to their purpose, find strength, clarify their direction, and feel a sense of inner peace. It was like watching Tony was like he was a linguistic wizard who would use his language to transform problems into opportunities. And it was that moment at 19 years old, I knew what my purpose was. To help people transcend the biggest challenges in their lives. To help people live in their purpose and power. And here is where my commitment was born, to master the art and science of communication. So what does that mean? What does it mean to be a master of communication? And one of the things that's important to realize is that communication happens on many levels. It's more than just speaking words and body language. You're always communicating. Actually, you cannot not communicate. You communicate with your thoughts, with your energetic transference. I mean, if somebody walks in the room, can't you feel their vibe? Even if they don't say anything, it's like their thoughts create ambiance. They carry a frequency. So you communicate with your internal dialogue, that little voice inside your head that talks to you. And you may be thinking, what voice? That one, that voice has power of taking you to heights or bringing you down. That little voice. And some people I know have a committee up there, more than one voice. So we communicate with our internal dialogue. We also communicate through symbols. For example, if we met for the first time and I put my hands close to my heart in prayer and bowed, as if to say namaste, that's communicating. Or what if I walk into a room or you walk in or someone else walks in and they're wearing an Om symbol or a cross? That's communicating too. I mean, we use symbols when we communicate in our emails or our text messages. Someone sends you a text and it says XO, XO, XO. That's communicating too. You can communicate by giving someone a look or a gesture or a smile. See, some people have a tendency to communicate more auditorily. They really tune into words and voice cues and sounds, while others communicate more kinesthetically with a touch or a feeling. And others communicate more visually. They think in pictures and engage the powers of imagination. I'll give you an example of that. Pause for a moment and think of something that you're inspired to create or to experience. I'm going to do that right now for a moment. Just think of a specific thing that you're inspired to create or experience. And as you do you have a picture? Notice the picture that emerges in your mind's eye and how it has structure. Tune into it for a moment. Is that picture in color or is it in black and white? Is it near or is it far? Is it bright or is it dim? Is it focused or defocused? Is it a movie or a still frame? Are you in the experience actually looking out through your own eyes, or are you looking at yourself, almost like if you were looking at a photograph? Now, notice what happens when you take this image in your mind of what you're inspired to create. Notice what happens when you take that image right now and make it bigger, make it even brighter, make it even crisper and clear. And sure, it's full panoramic in a movie where you're looking out through your own eyes and it's happening right now. Big, bright, crisp, and clear. And tune in. How does that shift your experience? See, you're continually communicating with yourself, with the pictures, the sounds, and the feelings in your mind. And when you can have rich imagery in your mind where you can see, hear, even taste your results accomplished in your mind in advance without attachment, this is a key to conscious creation. And of course, sometimes we communicate most powerfully by saying nothing at all, honoring the silent space. Because what happens when you don't honor the silent space, the space between words, between thoughts, you could easily miss something or end up saying something that you need to later unwind or fix. Sometimes silence actually speaks louder than words. So right now, I'm going to invite you to just become curious for a moment. What words, what phrases have you been using regularly? And what insights can you gain from them? What have you been talking about on an ongoing basis? Think of it this way. If you were to walk around with a voice recorder for a day, or better yet, let's say that we had the ability to get a voice recorder and we could actually put it in your brain and it recorded everything you said, either out loud or to yourself, what would be revealed? And please know, this is not about, good or bad or right or wrong. There's absolutely zero judgment here. This is about awareness. So let's get curious. And by getting curious, we create the space to integrate new insights. You know why? You have infinite possibilities of what could come out of your mouth. I mean, think about that. There's limitless ways to describe the human experience. And regardless of what anybody else says or does, or regardless of what's going on, you have choice on how you respond to others and to life. So consider, what are you speaking into existence? Are you speaking your truth while honoring others wherever they are? Are you talking about possibility and what inspires you? Are you championing your vision, cheering yourself on? Is that what you're focused on? Or are you talking about problems, bringing up doubts or fears, or focused on what isn't happening? Is there a conversation about what there isn't or about what there is? Is the conversation about what you're grateful for or what's lacking? Are you speaking kindly or unkindly of other people? How about yourself? What you speak about comes about. What are you saying after the words, I am? See, these words are potent. Be aware of what you link them to, because the thing that you are claiming has a way of reaching back and claiming you. Your communication determines what shows up in a universe of infinite possibility. And right now, there are infinite possibilities around you of what you could create, what you could attract, what you could experience personally, professionally, in your business ventures, your creativity, your art, your life's work, your relationships. Infinite possibilities surround you right now. And spiritual teachers have said this for centuries. Now, science is confirming this. Billions of bits of information surround you. The thing is that your neurology, your brain, my brain, we can't take in all of this information. It's too much. It would be like trying to download the whole internet. Can't take it in. So what we do all day long, and we all do it, and it's important to realize, because this is how we communicate, we do three things. We delete, we distort, and we generalize reality. And we only pick up a tiny little bit of information of everything that's happening around us. And what we pick up is what matches and harmonizes with our deepest beliefs, our values, our sense of self, our coded memories from the past, or what I call our map of reality. And when we understand this communication model, we get that people do not respond to reality, but rather they respond to their map of reality. And the map is not the territory. See, in NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming, which studies how language affects the nervous system, and it's one of the many pillars in my life's work, we say that perception is projection. In other words, each person is perceiving and communicating through the lens of his or her own consciousness. I mean, I'll give you an example. Do you know somebody who tends to be a little bit negative? Or maybe they're just so negative that even when something great happens, they look at you and they say, not for long. And you're looking at them going, wait a minute, what do you mean? Something great just happened. That's because if somebody has negativity deeply stored in their subconscious mind, they will look out onto infinite possibilities. They will delete things. They will distort what they see. They will project negativity onto it because that's what's vibing in their internal world, and it'll become a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like my good friend Michael Bernard Beckwith says. He says that you do not describe what you see, but rather you see what you describe. In other words, in a world of infinite possibility, you're not looking out there and actually describing what you're seeing, but rather what's happening is that what's showing up in your particular reality is what is reflecting back to you that which you are declaring. You are a creator. This is great news. This means that when you shift what you're seeing on the inside and what you're speaking on the inside, your entire reality shifts. In other words, when you change, the world around you changes. You have that much power. And this is why it's essential to really seek to understand another person's map of the world and to not judge. Because sometimes we are only seeing the tip of the iceberg. I'll give you an example. Have you ever communicated with someone and you thought that you conveyed your message clearly, but they heard something totally different than what you intended to convey? Has that ever happened? I love this quote by George Bernard Shaw. It says that the single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. And I'll give you an example of how sometimes people don't respond to reality, but they're responding to their own mental map of reality. I was once scheduled to speak on a cruise with other luminaries. And I hadn't been on a cruise since I was a child, and I had this imagination of what it would be like, that it would be fantastical and opulent, and I was packing my suitcases with my boyfriend at the time, and I had these visions of grand ballrooms and ladies and beautiful gowns descending down wide, splendid staircases, greeted by gentlemen in tuxedos. And I remember I even recalled the scene from the movie Titanic, where Kate Winslet floats down the staircase to meet her love. And I had this image in my mind of creating my own timeless romantic scene with me in this gown and my boyfriend in his tux. And I turned to him and I said, honey, this is going to be amazing. It'll be just like the Titanic. And he looked at me and he had this look on his face and he says, are you crazy? The Titanic? I don't want to go on a cruise if it's like the Titanic. And I turned to him and I said, well, didn't you see the movie? He said, yes, almost everybody died. And we just broke out in laughter because what happened was, to him, that word, the word Titanic, conjured images in his mind of floating corpses in the North Atlantic Sea. And then to me, that exact same word Titanic lit up these images of elegance and soulmate love. So that word, Titanic, was just a label. And it was pointing to two completely different internal experiences for the both of us. I mean, if we weren't present and playful and willing to communicate, this misunderstanding could have escalated. Somebody else, in the absence of supreme influence, could have reacted with disappointment and ended up projecting negative emotions or asking insecure questions like, gosh, Why doesn't he want to go on a romantic cruise with me? Or what's wrong with him? Or what's wrong with me? Have you ever experienced a disproportionate reaction over a mix-up like this? Or have you ever had someone react disproportionately towards you? See, when I use that word Titanic, I was just intending to be sweet and playful and romantic, and instead my communication caused my boyfriend to pull away. I'll share with you a belief that I embrace that supports me in masterfully communicating, and it can support you too. Here's what it is. I choose the belief that my communication is the response I get. In other words, I choose to take ownership for how my communication lands in another person's universe. So regardless of the response that you receive for another person, remember that you are always response able. That means that you are able to respond in a healthy, honorable way, no matter what. And a great practice is to invest a moment inhaling just one deep breath or two before responding. And you can also ask a question, ask purposeful questions to really seek to understand the other person's map of the world before you just respond. For example, in that Titanic example, instead of reacting, my boyfriend could have asked me a question. He could have said something like this: "Honey, how do you mean it'll be just like the Titanic?" And then listened. If he would have asked that one question, "How do you mean?" that question would have caused me to go inside and then reveal more of my own fantasy, which would have created a space for something, a unified possibility to happen. So interestingly enough, though, the actual cruise reflected none of our initial perceptions. It was this family-themed budget-type cruise ship with flashy lights and all-you-can-eat buffet. So it was hardly my picture of regal living. There was no gown, no splendid staircase, just one Titanic miscommunication. And this is why it's so important to realize that masters of communication, there's one thing that they consistently do. And there's a number of things, but here's one of them. They honor the other person's map of the world. No matter what. This doesn't mean you have to agree with them. It simply means that you honor the other person. And this allows you to access resources that you wouldn't otherwise have. And then from that space of honor, you ask questions to more clearly understand. For example, if somebody says something that challenges you or confuses you, rather than reacting, you can pause and ask, "How do you mean?" Or "What does that look like for you?" Or "How so?" A question as simple as "how so?" and then you wait for that response will cause the other person to more clearly observe their own thoughts and then describe their experience. Questions are powerful. And the quality of your life mirrors the quality of the questions you ask. Questions have manifesting power. They attract people and experiences into your life. Used unconsciously, they could bring unwanted experiences. But used intelligently, they pave the way for your dreams to become real. See, with questions, you can gather valuable information. You can clarify meaning. Questions allow you to more clearly understand another's map of the world, which allows you to develop an instant connection with anyone, anytime. Questions direct your focus. They can help you transform challenges into opportunities. You could use questions to evoke and call forth empowering mental and emotional states at will within yourself and within others. Albert Einstein came to his theories of relativity by asking and contemplating the question, what would happen if I rode a light beam? See, that question expanded his imagination. You could use questions to explore opportunities. That's what the founders of Google did. They asked a question like, how can we organize the world's information? See, questions amplify your materializing power. And there's two specific types of questions that I want to focus on. Questions that you ask others and questions that you ask yourself, as well as empowering questions or disempowering questions. Realize that the greatest minds of our time have enriched our world by asking imaginative questions. I mean, the most significant technological advances in history originated with the question. Questions open portals into previously unthinkable realms. I mean, Walt Disney asked, "How can I create the happiest place on earth?" Steve Jobs asked, "How can I drive the human race forward?" He began each day asking this question: if today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I'm about to do today? Oprah said that in the early days of her career, after she felt so overwhelmed with so many people seeing her as a benevolent caregiver, that she paused to consider what she believes is one of the most important questions that you could ever ask. And that question is, what do I really want? And what is my spirit telling me is the best way to proceed? See, these questions are wise and empowering because they focus your attention toward a vision. Clearly, questions like these lead to very different answers than questions like, what do I have to do today? Or what do I need to do today? So, think about it. When you ask a question, there's infinite possibilities of what you could ask. And there's something very important to realize about questions. They contain presuppositions. Your language presupposes if you're coming from a place of love or fear. Your language presupposes if you're coming from a place of scarcity or abundance. So, what do I mean when I use the word presuppositions? Presuppositions are embedded assumptions in language that reveal the beliefs, the attitudes, and the values of the one who is speaking and will summon what they declare. See, a discerning listener knows that language is a doorway into someone's inner world. For example, let's say in the context of business, if somebody asks a question like, how am I going to survive in this market? On the surface, that question may appear empowering, as if the person is looking for ways to rise above challenges. And although at some level, a question like that may temporarily create motivation to not be in a state of survival, the inherent presupposition in that question reveals that that person is actually in that state of survival, which attracts even more of that experience into their life. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Why? Because we're creators and we create as we speak. Remember, we're in a universe of infinite possibilities and it's all available. So I want you to consider this for a moment from an energetic standpoint. If a person is in an energy of survival, then that frequency is being projected out, and that's what comes back in, because it's in the giving that we receive. So what if that same person asked a different question? Instead of, how am I going to survive in this market? What if they asked a question like this? How can I be even more aware of the unlimited opportunities that surround me in my life right now? If that person were to ask that question throughout the day, do you think that eventually they would become even more aware of unlimited opportunities? Of course. And what does that question presuppose? It presupposes that they already are aware and that there are unlimited opportunities and that they're surrounding them right now, which is going to cause their brain to find things that match what they are declaring. Questions are the answer. And what happens when someone's not aware of their questions can end up creating conflict with other people or even within themselves. For example, let's say that a person wants to start a new business, but deep down they have these limiting beliefs that cause them to ask a disempowering question like, what if it doesn't work? Or what if now is not the best time? Or what if I don't have enough experience? Or what if I don't have enough money or enough investment capital? And then they can become torn. It's like a part of them wants to take action, but another part of them doubts. And so they lose their power. They may want to create value for others, prosperity for themselves, doing what they love, but in that moment, they've given up their ability to make that happen. So one of the reasons why it's so essential to really discipline your mind and focus on asking empowering questions is because questions are like heat-seeking missiles that are encoded to find a specific target. And the vibration in which you ask the question will be the frequency in which it returns to you. So for example, if someone asks a question with hesitancy, let's say that they are asking the universe to bring their soulmate. They want their love to show up. But when they ask that question, they ask it with hesitancy due to hurt experiences from the past or other reasons. Then what happens is the universe responds with hesitancy. But you know what? If you asked with faith, knowing and trusting that an answer will come, then it will. Whatever you ask, your brain will find an answer that matches your deepest expectations. I mean, there's a specific part of your brain that scientists call the reticular activating system, or the RAS. It's the part of your brain that tells you what to notice. And I'm going to give you an example of how the RAS works. It's like, have you ever bought a car that you thought was unique? And then you start driving around, and all of a sudden it seems like all these other people are driving the exact same car you just bought? Well, what happened? Are you out there setting trends? No, the cars were there before, but you weren't focused on them. Therefore, your brain deleted them. Remember I mentioned earlier that we delete, distort, and generalize reality? But now your car is in the forefront of your mind because it's important to you, so you begin to notice the things that match your dominant thoughts. This is important because this means that you can consciously formulate questions to signal to your RAS to sift through infinite possibilities and find and bring you what it is that you want. The quality of the question determines the quality of the response. If you formulate a disempowering question, you get a disempowering answer. So if somebody asks a question like, why does this always happen to me? Or how could I be so stupid? Then they'll get a disempowering answer. But what if that same person asked a higher vibrational question about the same situation? What if they asked a question like, what can I learn from this? Or what's the opportunity here? Or who do I know that's an expert that could help me understand this? How will that shift their experience? It's not just shifting the questions. It's a shift in an entire focus from something unwanted to something wanted, which improves everything. I mean, I remember when I first started my company, it was back in the year 2000. And I signed my very first account, which was Mercedes-Benz, only 2 days after launching my company. I didn't have any business cards. I didn't have a strategy. I also didn't have any limiting beliefs. And I remember I picked up the phone, I scheduled a meeting with the decision maker, and on my way down to meet him, I immersed myself with empowering questions. I asked questions like, how can I create an instant connection with him? How can I understand what is most important to him? How can I communicate in a way where he knows for a fact that I am the best person on the planet to deliver this training and consulting to his team? How can I speak into his listening? How can I inspire immediate action? How can I put together a win-win deal today? And I kept flooding myself with these empowering questions. By the time I walked in, the deal was already done in my mind. And you know what? This is what the top athletes do. This is what the top entertainers of the world do. They create their results in advance in their mind, and then they step into their creation. And that's what I did. And within a few hours, we had structured a deal for a year of my training and consulting services, which I hadn't even formulated yet. And I ended up driving off the showroom floor with a $1,500 a month cherry red Mercedes. And it started with questions. And it's not just the questions that you ask your clients, for example, in the context of business. It's also the questions that you ask yourself about your clients. Why? Because your questions influence your state of mind. They influence how you perceive what you believe is possible and how you show up. I mean, imagine asking yourself questions like this. What do I appreciate about this person? Or why do I want to work with him? Or what am I inspired to co-create with him? When you elevate your questions, you elevate your entire experience of reality. So now I'm going to give you a couple insights on how you can craft your own empowering questions. And what an empowering question is it's a consciously crafted question that you ask either yourself or others that inspires action towards a clear, desirable aim. And it's important to realize, first off, that you ask questions all day long. You ask questions out loud, you ask them to yourself, but now I'm giving you some insights to do it by design, on purpose. First thing is state your questions in the affirmative. Ensure that it's leading you and moving you toward a vision. Be sure that the language flows in the direction that you want to go. And what this means is state what you want and not what you don't want. Suppose that you have an important decision to make. You can ask affirmative questions. For example, what's the wisest choice? Or what's most important? You could say, having made this choice, how will I feel? Will it elevate and uplift my life and those involved? Or you can ask one of my favorite questions, is it essential? And by essential, I don't mean is it necessary? I mean, is it of my essence? Is it an extension of my spirit? You know, I taught this process once of asking empowering questions in a corporation, and then I guided everyone present through their own empowering question and guided them to write it down. And I remember one person raised their hand, and I called on him, and here was his question. He says, how can I not be such a procrastinator? Now, consider the presuppositions in this question. This is an example of a question that does not work because it reinforces an old disempowering identity, and we live in an attraction-based universe, so placing attention on not wanting something actually draws it closer. I'll give you an example, so play along. If I were to say to you, don't think of the color red, what are you thinking about right now? I bet you're thinking about red. How about if I said, don't think of a blue tree? What are you thinking about right now? See, you cannot not think about something. In order for you to not think about something, you've got to think about it first. In other words, when you think about not procrastinating, guess what you think about first? Procrastination. So questions stimulate the RAS to find what you speak. So if someone's focusing on not procrastinating, they get more procrastination. So what's a more empowering question? What's a more affirmative, results-oriented question that this person could ask? What if they asked, how can I be even more focused on accomplishing my top 3 results for the day? Or how can I focus my energy to accomplish this in the next hour? Or how can I be even more efficient? Or how can I be even more effective with my time? Or what is the best use of my time right now? Or how inspired and empowered will I feel once this is accomplished? Questions direct focus. I mean, I taught this at another corporation once, and I remember I had one team member that raised their hand when we were sharing our empowering questions, and here was his empowering question, quote, he says, how can I be even more tolerant with customers who are absolute jerks? And, you know, he was seeking a solution, but the questions he was asking was calling in more experiences that he didn't want. I want you to really consider this. Do you think that this person could create an entirely new experience, not just for himself, but for his customer and for his whole company, simply by elevating the question? I mean, what would happen if he shifted his language to the affirmative? How about if he asked questions like this? How can I genuinely connect with this person? How can I understand what's most important to him? And how can I honor his experience while clearly communicating our policy so we both feel great at the end of this call? I mean, how can I resolve his challenge right now and exceed his expectations? Or how can I brighten his day? How can I bring all of my attention and energy to this moment? See, if this man asks these questions throughout the day, not only is he going to have more fun at work, but his results will improve. So you want to state your question in the affirmative. And another insight is that empowering questions most often begin with the words, how, what, or who. See, you could start a question with the word why. The thing is that why often leads to philosophical conversation or even amplifying problems. Someone may say, gosh, why is this happening? Or why didn't I think of that? So make sure that if you use the word why to formulate your question, that it uplifts. For example, why am I inspired to accomplish this? Questions that begin with why, they can invoke a strong sense of purpose, but if used unconsciously, they can bring you in a downward spiral. And then the other insight is when you ask your question, you want it to create momentum towards where you want to go. So for example, tune into this distinction and difference in these questions. If I asked a question like, how can I be focused? That's empowering, right? It's a great question. But what if I elevated a little bit and then said, how can I be even more focused? Or what if I said, how can I be even more focused right now? That brings the energy into this moment and it makes it actionable. So right now, it's your turn. So if you're driving, you're obviously not going to do this. But if you're listening to me, you may want to, grab a piece of paper and a pen if there's one handy and write down your own empowering question. You could state it in the affirmative, begin with how, what, or who, and make sure that it creates momentum. And before you write it down, you may want to consider this. What question can you ask yourself right now that by the very nature of accepting the presuppositions in that question will cause the greatest elevation in your life? What would that be? And by the way, you don't need to know the answer. That's the beautiful thing. When you ask the question with sincerity and with certainty that an answer will come, it will. So what's your question? I invite you to write one down. And then once our time together is complete, then you'll have a chance to really be with this and then write a list of empowering questions. I want you to imagine asking expansive questions. Questions like, what's the one thing that I could focus on right now that will enrich every area of my life? What will that question attract? What previously deleted opportunities will you begin to notice or envision? How about this? What if you only asked questions you wanted the answer to? I started this ritual of asking empowering questions at a young age. So I'll share a quick story with you of the early days in my career. I entered the personal development business at age 19. And my title back then was corporate trainer. And my job was facilitating 45-minute presentations. They were introductory workshops for sales and management teams. And then once I was done, I would invite and enroll people in the upcoming seminar. But because of my age and my inexperience, I was called the kid, and I was given all of the non-qualified workshops that nobody else wanted to run. So while all the other trainers were living in the heart of New York City, I was actually camped out at that time in all the way in the outskirts of New Jersey, and I was given all the meetings that were hours away with rookie teams that nobody wanted. So despite the situation I was in, I kept seeing myself succeeding in my mind, in the heart of New York City. I would even go into the city on weekends and immerse myself in the energy, imagining myself leading workshops for the most powerful companies in the world. And then one day, opportunity called on my brick-sized cell phone. I could hear my manager's voice on the other end of the phone. He was like, Nurka, how quickly can you get to Wall Street? So I pulled out my big Thomas Guide map of the tri-state area to decipher the distance. And I said to him, I could get there pretty quickly. I was actually sitting in bumper-to-bumper traffic when he had called. And I said, why? What's up? He said, we have a workshop that's scheduled on Wall Street with a major investment banking firm in just a few hours, and it's been confirmed for weeks, and they're expecting our top trainer, and he just had an emergency. He's on his way to the airport, and all the other trainers are busy giving presentations. And then he said to me, you're our last hope. It's your chance, kiddo. Are you ready? And the word that came out of my mouth was yes. I wanted to feel ready, but inside I felt a little bit scared and excited, but I took a deep breath. I centered myself. I sat up straight and I declared, I am ready. He gave me all of the details and the call ended. And I knew this was going to happen. I had committed. So my body was trembling a little bit, but I didn't want to say it out loud. I just took a deep breath and then I pulled in to a coffee shop. I sat in the parking lot for a moment, I closed my eyes, and I pictured myself walking in to this office and connecting with each person present. Then I ended up going into the bathroom at the coffee shop. I brushed the lint off my velvet jacket, which I had bought at a thrift store, and I would recycle with all of my outfits back then. And I looked at myself in the mirror. I spruced up my curly locks. I had this curly hair back then. And with passion, I declared, with faith the size of a mustard seed, I can move mountains. And I began to say that over and over and over in my mind. With faith the size of a mustard seed, I can move mountains. With faith the size of a mustard seed, I can move mountains. I began to use my language to call forth faith, which to me meant the absence of doubt or absolute certainty, and calling that so I could move mountains, which to me meant achieving great success. And with that mantra just permeating my being, I got in my rent-a-car and then I drove to the transit station in New Jersey, and I took the underground train into the city, and then I took the subway to the financial district. And the whole way, I was saying to myself, faith the size of a mustard seed, I can move mountains. I had my shoulders back. I was looking up. I was taking deep breaths, and I was repeating this mantra. And when I arrived at the station, I marched up the stairs, and right when I got to the top, I remember I locked eyes with Wall Street's charging bull. And I remember feeling this feeling of mixed terror and complete exhilaration. And I knew in that moment this was a rite of passage. And I could hear the little voice in my head that was saying, Nirka, you are ready. You can do this. So the whole way I found the building saying to myself, with faith the size of a mustard seed, I can move mountains, until this mantra permeated every cell of my being. And then I found the building. I was a little bit sweaty, stepped in the elevator, took it to the top floor, and the whole way up, faith the size of a mustard seed, I can move mountains. Faith the size of a mustard seed, I can move mountains. And then the elevator door opened, and it revealed this enormous mahogany desk and a receptionist who was sitting behind the desk. And I walked over to her and introduced myself. I said, hi, I'm Nirka, and I'm here to see Fred. She looked at me coldly, and she says, do you have an appointment? Yes, I said, I'm the trainer that's scheduled to meet with him and his team. Really? She said, take a seat. And she picked up the phone, and this is what she said. She said, Fred, Shirley Temple's here to see you. Oh my gosh, my heart sank. I could actually see the flyer that was up on the wall that was announcing the sales mastery workshop with a top trainer that was going to begin in 15 minutes. And people were trickling into the training room. And as each person entered, I connected with them in my mind. And then soon, this tall, distinguished, silver-haired man in a dark blue pinstripe suit, he walked into the lobby, and I stood up to greet him. And when I did, he was glancing over my shoulder as though he was looking for someone else. So I walked over to him, I held out my hand, and I smiled, and I said, hi, Fred, I'm Nirka, your trainer. And he turned pale. He looked at me and he said, are you going to do this by yourself? So I thought I'd create some humor to create rapport. I held up my briefcase, I pointed at it, and I said, well, Fred, I've got a little green man in here who helps me out in case I get in trouble. He was not amused. He had been promoting this event for weeks to his highly experienced team. These are men and women that made hefty salaries and most likely wouldn't appreciate being trained by a 19-year-old amateur. So Fred looked nervous. And, we walked into the training room, and I remember he walked in front of me, and I was walking behind him, and I assured him that I was going to deliver my absolute best presentation and that everything happens for a reason. He looked at me and he said to me, listen, kid, 20 minutes max. So I got up there and I put my heart, mind, and soul into every word of my my very basic presentation, my 5 steps to success presentation. And at the end of my talk, I asked the key question. I said, who wants to go to the seminar? And only one hand went up, mine. So I asked again. I said, no, seriously, who wants to go to the seminar? No hands. I could feel the tension in the room rising. So I took a deep breath. I smiled, and then I shared a story, a funny story about a lumberjack that won a contest because he sharpened his axe. And then I softly asked, I said, now I'm sure somebody wants to sharpen their skills and go to the seminar. Dead silence. Now the tension's really rising. So I just paused, took a deep breath. I put my hand on my heart and I said, I honor you and your time. Please allow me to share just one last story. And then a miracle happened. Fred stood up and he looked at me. And then he looked at his team and then he pointed at me. And he said to them, he said, do you all see this kid? He said, this kid's got balls to come in here and talk to you like this. And if this seminar can get this kid to do this, I'm going. And I think every single one of you needs to go. And if you take action right now, I'll pay for half. And then he turned it back over to me. And about 1/3 of Fred's team enrolled for the seminar that day. And when we walked back to the office, to his office, this time we were walking side by side. And he said to me, you know, I got a daughter that's about your age, and she usually comes to me for money. So I really appreciate what you're doing. And I smiled and pounced on that opportunity. I said, hey, would you please endorse me on letterhead? I'll do better than that, he said. Watch this. And he took out his big Rolodex and thumbed through it and picked up the phone and called the other branch managers and gave me a glowing recommendation. And the very next day, he personally escorted me right onto the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, introducing me to all the key players. And this opened the door in the early stages of my career. So what's the moral of the story? How is it that a 19-year-old kid was able to produce those results? Supreme influence. I aligned my focus, the pictures in my mind, my language, my body language with my vision. And then I stepped forward with faith. See, it's been almost 2 decades since Shirley Temple succeeded on Wall Street. And what I know with absolute certainty is that you too can move mountains. And you accomplish this by aligning your thoughts, your words, and your actions with your true purpose and vision. This is living in supreme influence. So with that, here's a quick exercise. For a moment, just tune in. How easily can you remember a time in your life, a specific time, where you felt absolutely unstoppable? I mean, think right now and go back to a specific time where you were on fire or on a roll, where you knew something was going to happen, and go back to that specific time in your mind right now, as if it's happening right now, and notice what you see. Notice what you hear. Notice what you feel. Breathe the way that you're breathing when you feel absolutely unstoppable. How do you stand when you're in this state? Feel the feelings in your body of being absolutely unstoppable and anchor those in. See, communication mastery means consciously communicating with yourself, to call forth the highest within you and then bringing your best into all of your relationships and all of your projects. So I've enjoyed our time together. And I encourage you to pre-order my new book, Supreme Influence, Change Your Life with the Power of the Language You Use. And I also invite you to join my community so we can take this conversation to the next level. Just go to my website, which is niurkainc.com or www.niurkainc.com, and I will leave you with the opening line of my new book. It says, "One person's awakening elevates the consciousness of the planet." I am writing this book for the one. You. Namaste.